We're doing Parak for Esther, okay? Sefer Esther, and I entitle it Esther Risks Everything. Let's read the text and then we'll begin. Vayhi bayom hashlishi vaytilbash Esther malchut vatamod b'chatzar beit hamelech hapnimit nochach beit hamelech v'hamelech yoshev al kisei malchuto b'veit hamalchut nochach petach habayit. Now it came to pass, it was the third day, Esther donned royalty and stood in the inner court of the king's palace, facing the king's house, while the king was sitting on his throne in the throne room facing the chamber's entrance. Next, Vayichirot hamelech et Esther Hamaka omedet b'chatzer nasachem be'enav. When the king noticed Queen Esther standing in the court, she won his favor. Vayoshet Hamelech le'Esther et hasharvit hazahav asher biyado vatikrav Esther vatiga birosh hasharvit. And the king extended to Esther the gold scepter that was in his hand, and Esther approached and touched the tip of the scepter. Vayomer lo Hamelech ma loch Esther Hamalka u'ma bakashatech ad chatzi hamalchut b'yinaten lach. The king said to her, "What is it for you, Queen Esther? And what is your petition? Even if it be up to half of the kingdom, it shall be granted to you." Vatomer Esther im alamelech tov yavo hamelech v'haman hayom el hamishta asher asiti lo. Esther said, "If it pleases the king, let the king and Haman come today to the banquet that I have prepared for him." Vayomer hamelech ma'aru et Haman la'asot et dvar Esther vayavo hamelech v'haman el hamishta asher asta Esther. And then the king commanded, "Tell Haman to hurry and fulfill Esther's wish." So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. Vayomer hamelech le'Esther b'mishta yayin, ma she'latech v'naten lach, ma bakashatech al chatzi hamalchut v'teyash. The king said to Esther during the wine feast, "What is your request? It shall be granted to you. What is your petition? Even up to half of the kingdom, and it shall be fulfilled." Vatan Esther vatomar, she'lati uvakashati. So Esther answered, "My request and my petition, im matzati chen beinei hamelech, v'im al hamelech tov latet et she'lati v'lasot et bakashati, yavo hamelech v'haman el hamishter asher aseh lehem u'machar eseh kidvar hamelech." And she answered, so Esther answered and said, "My request and my petition, if I have won the king's favor, and it pleases the king to grant my request and to perform my petition, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and tomorrow I will do the king's bidding." Vayetze Haman bayom ahu sameach v'tov lev yichirot Haman and Mordechai bashar hamelech v'lo kam v'lo za mimenu vayimale Haman al Mordechai chema. That day Haman went joyful and exuberant. He was flying high. But when Haman noticed Mordechai in the king's gate, that he neither stood nor stirred even before him, Haman was infuriated with Mordechai. Vayisapak Haman vayavo el beitzo vayishlach vayaveh et hoavav etzeres ishto. Nevertheless, Haman restrained himself and went home. He sent for his friends and for his wife Zeresh. Vayisaper lehem Haman et kvod al shro v'rov banav vet kol asher gidlo hamelech vet asher niso al hasarim va'avdei hamelech. And Haman recounted to them the glory of his wealth and of his many sons, and every instance where the king had promoted him and advanced him above all of the officials and royal servants. Vayomer Haman af lo ivia Esther hamalka im hamelech l'mishta shasta kimoti v'gam l'machar nikaru lo im hamelech. And he goes on and he tells, Haman said, "Moreover, Queen Esther invited no one but myself to accompany the king to the banquet that she had prepared tomorrow. And tomorrow, too, I am invited by her along with the king. Not only was today, I'm invited again tomorrow. Be honest with you, that all of this means nothing to me. As long as I see the Jew Mordechai sitting at the king's gate, Vatomer Lo Zeresh ishto v'chol avav yasu eitz gavoa 50 amah uvaboker amor lamalach yitlu et Mordechai alav uvo im halamelech hamishter sameach vayitav davar lifnei Haman vayas ha'etz. Then his wife Zeresh and all his friends said to him, "If this is what's bothering you, we got a great idea. Let a gallows be made 50 cubits high, and tomorrow morning speak to the king and have them hang Mordechai on it. Then, in good spirits, accompany the king to the banquet." The suggestion pleased Haman, and he had the gallows erected. That is the story of chapter 5. But remember, really what's happening here is Esther is risking everything. That is really the story here. And the Rav wants to understand via the psukim at hand how Esther accomplished saving the Jews, because she saves us. And on the one hand, and what motivates Haman, which is at the end of the parak, such hatred against the Jew. What's motivating him? And the Rav analyzes very carefully, as he always does. He sees in the, let me just let this person in. He sees in these psukim the answers to all of this, in particular, a sense that should radiate with all, which should resonate with all of us, understanding the dynamic of anti-Semitism, because it's here right in front of us that we can really appreciate what happened on October 7th as well. There's no sefer that speaks to us more today than the sefer of Megillat Esther in light of what happened since October 7th. But let's take a look. Go back to that very opening pasuk, and the Rav sees in 6 words that it is pregnant with such information, it's filled with such information that you have to analyze it so carefully. And he divides it 3 words and 3 words. Vayi bayom hashlishi. Now it came to pass on the 3rd day. Why is that so important? The 3rd day, the first focus the Rav notes is the fact that Esther appeared to the Melech, to the king, observing what? A fast of 72 hours. It was on that 3rd day. Why, wonders the Rav, would Esther have logically fasted for 72 hours before she goes to see Achashverosh? Such a fast could have literally fatal results. What does fasting do to your physical being? Does it increase your beauty or does it diminish your beauty? Clearly, we all know it diminishes one's beauty. And if she's now going to see the king, and she knows she hasn't been summoned. So what's she depending upon? That he will see her, and he has expressed strong love and desire for her. When he sees her, even though she has not been summoned, what will he do? His passion for her will be aroused, and he will let her in. Well, what would you want if that's the case? You'd want to look your best, not your weakest. If that's the case, she should have concentrated on making herself physically unbelievably beautiful. And she doesn't focus on her physical beauty at all for the 72. She doesn't even give it a few days to wear off, right? Okay, you fasted. Wait a few more days. Then go to him. No, when does she go? Literally as she is ending the fast. And we don't even hear her breaking the fast, right? She didn't run home, Motzei Yom Kippur, out of here. Let's go. Let's get to home. 1, 2, 3. She doesn't, we don't even know if she broke her fast by the time she arrives to the king's palace. And yet she does the opposite of what logic would be telling us. 72 hours does that harm to your physical appearance. Instead of focusing on her physical appearance, what is she doing? What is motivating her? This underscores a truth that we cannot forget when we read the Megillah. There is no doubt that Esther has a physical beauty. There is no doubt whatsoever. But she has something even more important. And what is it? One word, chen. What is chen? So the Rav defines chen as divine charisma. Charisma means, and he translates charisma from the charisma means favor or grace. That's what charisma means, favor or grace. This component of her personality improved and was enhanced by the 72-hour fast. Her physical beauty wasn't, but her charisma, her chen, her divine favor or grace was God-focused through the fast. And that's why it says, Vahi bayom hashlishi. Why are you told that, the Rav notes? It is crucial to the story because you're getting an insight in what makes Esther tick. Continue on. I told you the Rav divides the 6 words. What are the next 3 words? Vatilbash Esther Malchut. That is totally incorrect. And Chazal note this. Chazal note this and say, that's not the way it should have been. There's a word missing. Vatilbash Esther Bigdei Malchut. You don't don and wear royalty, you wear garments of royalty. And yet it doesn't say that. It says, Valtobash Esther Malchut. Esther garbed herself in royalty. How does one do that? So the Gemara in Megillah, Daf Yud Daled Amud Beis 14b, addresses that, and it responds, what did she dress? She dressed in Shalavashta Beruach HaKodesh. She was garbed in divine inspiration. What the Megillah is telling us is what motivated Esther at the very critical moment when she's going to see Achashverosh. On that third day, when she risks her life in order to save all of the Jewish people, she rose from her ashes. She took off her sackcloth, still fasting. She dresses in what? Not in physical beauty. That's what the Gemara is telling us. She doesn't get dressed in physical beauty. Rather, she dresses herself in divine inspiration. That inspiration is what captivates everyone's imagination. It's the mystery that surrounds Esther. She has a mystery about her. We know this because let's go back to Perek Beis, Pasuk Yud Zayin. That moment, chapter 2, verse 17. Take a look. Go back to 2:17. What is in 2:17? That's when Achashverosh sees Esther for the first time. And let's see what the pasuk says. Page 1254, verse Yud Zayin, 17. Vayehav hamelech es Esther mikol hanashim, vatisa chen v'chesed lefonav mikol habetulot, vayosem keter malchut berosha, and the king loved Esther above all of the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all of the virgins, and she was crowned queen. Why does the pasuk add the words? Rabbi Soloveitchik notes, the truth is, if this was a beauty contest, how would you have written that pasuk? She was beloved more than all the women. She won the beauty contest. But no, it adds a number of words. Something else is cooking here. Something else is crucial. Achashverosh sees much more than the physical beauty of Esther. Achashverosh sees she has chen v'chesed. That's totally inappropriate and superfluous if it's a beauty contest. But if clearly something else is happening. Esther has a beautiful complexion. She's a gorgeous woman. There's no doubt about it. She couldn't have gotten anywhere if she didn't. But she has more than just a physical attraction. That makes her amazing. The Megillah is telling us that she would never have been selected just for her beauty. For her beauty, maybe Vashti was physically more beautiful than Esther. Esther doesn't win hands down the physical beauty. Esther has a charm. It's unique and intriguing that no one else has. When you say unique, my mother always points out, by the way, it's totally superfluous to say very unique. Either you're unique or you're not unique. It's verbose to say very unique. By definition, you're unique. You can't be very unique, but everybody says very unique. But she's not very unique. She's unique. She's unique and intriguing that no one else had. What is it? The Rav claimed, quote unquote, an inner strength that was mysterious and intriguing, and everybody was attracted to it. Achashverosh was attracted to it. That's why we went back to, let's see how he responded to her when he first saw her. Achashverosh felt instinctively and intuitively that Esther was not an ordinary woman. I quote the Rav. When he was in her presence, he felt that his whole being was more exalted, more advanced, more elevated to greater heights. When Esther was in his presence, she overwhelmed him by that intrigue. That was what caught his interest. He might not have realized it. He didn't. Achashverosh doesn't even realize what's making him so attracted to Esther. But in her presence, he was raised from the depths of vulgarity without even realizing it, from vulgarity and egocentricity, and internally he soared to dizzying heights, and he doesn't even realize it. But that's what she does. Now, I want to stop for half a second and don't think this is miraculous. That's not the miracle of this story, that Esther catches his intrigue. That's not at all, because it happens to all of us. When we meet really, truly great spiritual figures, if you've ever really met an ish ruach, I don't mean man, it could be a woman too, that is really spiritually unique, we're all impacted by it. This is exactly what Hashem said to Moshe back in Bamidbar, Perik Yud Aleph, Pasuk Yud Zayin. I want you to appoint judges. And what does Hashem say to Moshe? Take a look. You don't look now, but take a look when you get a chance. Go back to Bamidbar, Perik Yud Aleph, Pasuk Yud Zayin, 11:17. Hashem says to Moshe, "V'atzalti min haruach asher alecha v'samti alehem." I will take of the spirit that is upon you, and I will put it upon them. What was God telling Moshe? This is exactly what Ahasuerus felt in Esther's presence. What is fascinating to me, however, is Ahasuerus is so unaware of what's making him tick. But he realizes something is happening to him in her presence. He had no idea what it was. He thought that at that moment he was crowning a beautiful woman, a replacement of Vashti. That's all he thought. But he was doing, 2 seconds, but he viewed Esther from the time that she realized at that moment, yes, she was a Vashti replacement, but so much more was happening, and he wasn't in tune with what? He knew something was happening to him, and that's not the miracle here. That's not the miracle of the story. Because that happens, I have experienced it when I really meet a ish ruach. When I used to meet Rabbi Soloveitchik, that's exactly what you felt. You were just overwhelmed by the presence. They say this, for example, I never had the zechut of meeting the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, but one after another, people tell you that's exactly the experience that they had with meeting such an individual. It's v'atzalti min haruach, I will take from your spirit, I will put it on them. And that's exactly what's happening. Her spirit is suddenly being felt by Ahasuerus. And the Rav views this opening verse to this parak as replete with another lesson as well. So it's one lesson, right? That she didn't focus on her physical because she had something more precious. What was that? The divine charisma. Chazal call it Ruach HaKodesh. In English, you would call it divine charisma. That is exactly what she had. Esther did something else as well. Esther risked everything because she's risking her life. She was not summoned, and she didn't know how it was going to turn out. She was hoping that it would turn out the way it did, but she didn't know. The Rav learns another lesson here. Esther risked everything because she realized that Judaism has no patience for cowardice or for an exaggerated caution that stymies one from risking when he needs to risk. Let me repeat that. Esther realizes that Judaism has no patience for cowardice and an exaggerated caution. In other words, I will only act, what's exaggerated caution? I determine, I look at it, everything, and then I say, I don't know, there's too much risk here, I'm not taking the risk. Judaism demands of its leaders that at times when risk needs to be taken, you can't be you can't be concerned with you can't be too cautious. You have to be willing to risk. You have to believe that you will succeed. Judaism requires of the true leader to take those risks needed and not be so concerned about logic dictating how you're going to act. One must be led by a spiritual perception that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to be on my side. Logical formal analysis will be only detrimental to you when you need to take those risks. Or in the words of the Rav, the most important decisions one makes in life are reached in the intuitive rather than the logical discussion and dimension. That is true. Again, The most important decisions one makes in life are reached in the intuitive rather than in the logical dimension. And that's true about our lives. And with a leader, Esther is demonstrating you got to take risk. And Judaism demands it when it's needed. If Esther had limited her thinking to the logical dimension, she would have come up with a negative conclusion. She would never have gone seeing the king because he had not summoned her. He knew, she knew, everyone knew. Didn't the Megillah tell us? Everyone knew in the country. This was the law of the land. You're not summoned and he doesn't extend his scepter. What happens to you? You're taken off to the gallows. You're killed, right? You're considered a threat. From a logical, rational perspective, her actions were absurd and suicidal. Mordecai's defiance of Haman, Esther's risking her life, and with it the lives of millions of Jews, was totally logically unwarranted. She did so because the Rav writes, on that third day, Esther dressed herself in royalty, which meant she dressed herself in the spirit of Hashem, which descended upon her. She was able to do that because she was this unique figure. And every once in a while, you encounter these figures. And Esther is such a figure. And guess who knew that more than anyone else? Mordecai. Mordecai knew that Esther had this Ruach HaKodesh. She had this Chaim. And he, Achashverosh, is smitten by it without even realizing it. And that's what happens so often. You had some comments, and because then, yeah.
What? I mean, Achashverosh was such a bore.
Yes.
And portrayed as such a bore.
Yes.
It's
Vulgar.
that he recognized
He doesn't know what's happening to him. He doesn't know what's happening to him. He's affected because when you meet the most vulgar people who meet really Anshe Ruach, know that something is unique about them. You have stories like this during the Holocaust where Nazis met, they're ready to kill somebody and something overtook them. Special people, I mean, it didn't happen enough.
Right.
But when we've read these stories and we say, oh my God, there was a miracle. What I'm telling you is it's not a miracle. It's part of the human condition. You meet Anshe Ruach that are really Anshe Ruach. You've read, I'm positive, what's his name's biography of the Rebbe. Why am I? Telushkin. Yeah. You read Telushkin's biography. It's a beautiful biography.
Yeah.
You read it. You hear one after another, documenting how overwhelmed they were. World leaders that met the Rebbe were, and the same thing, maybe less so. He didn't have that he didn't have the Rebbe's personality, but he was such an ish ruach. I'm telling you, we used to stand sittering when we met with the Rav. What was it? There was something there. Everybody who met the Rav will tell you this. There was just something that oozed from him. There was a divine charisma. There are certain people that have this divine charisma. Very few, that's why they're unique. But when you encounter it, you're smitten by it. And so Achashverosh is smitten by it without realizing it. Okay? Yeah.
I want to mention that it also presents itself when she first went for the contest. Haggai, who was in charge of the women, he really favored her and he looked upon her kindly and he did it.
He realized also there was something spiritual.
His spiritual
charisma.
Is it always for good people, or does it also exist in evil people? I can think of evil people who are somehow
They're very charismatic.
There are some people that twisted. Yes. We're going to see it in a few seconds. We're going to see the Haman, right? Yeah. Continue on. Now go into Pasuk base. Vayikiros Hamelech. Now what happens in Pasuk base? Vayikiros Hamelech et Esther Hamalka omedet bechatzer nasa chen beinav. He looks up and he sees. Who does he see? There's an extra word here. What's the extra word? Read again. Vayikiros Hamelech et Esther. Esther Hamalka. Hamalka.
The old idea.
So we know who she's the queen. Why would the Megillah add the word Hamalka here? So the Rav notes that's crucial. That extra word seems to be superfluous, but not at all. It's not superfluous at all. Here, look, he's describing what Achashverosh saw. Have in your imagination. You're sitting on your throne, Achashverosh. He notices Esther standing there, right? It should have simply said he saw Esther. And yet we're told he saw Esther Hamalka. What could the Megillah be telling us that he saw by adding the word Hamalka? In this one word, the Megillah is telling us that Achashverosh noticed the queen in Esther. The queen in Esther. Esther had a sense of royalty in all her own right. She's not Vashti. Vashti may have been more beautiful, as I pointed out. Maybe. But Esther is more regal. Esther is Esther Hamalka. She is singular and distinct and radiated a sense of serenity, peace, cleanliness of spirit, power, and kindness, the Rav writes. She is singular and distinct. She radiates this special unique features. She has a charm that simply cannot be ignored. So he extends his scepter to her, right? She's the queen. That's why he realizes as he sits, al kisei malchuto, the pasuk says, he's sitting on throne in full regalia. If you were depicting this, if you were producing this as a play, how would you dress based on this pasuk? Here you have your script. How would you dress? Here you're the producer. How would you dress Achashverosh to look? He's dressed in his full regalia. He's sitting on his throne. The text is telling us. There's a blatant contrast here. Notice what's happening. The writer of the Megillah is brilliant, but you have to get in tune with the text. Here, there's a blatant contrast in this pasuk. Achashverosh is dressed in garments of royalty. That demonstrates his royalty. It's all fake. It's garment level. That's all it is to him. That's all. There's a contrast being marked here by the author, right? Achashverosh has to sit. What gives Achashverosh his royalty? His garments, how he dresses. He needs those to be king. But Esther has something queenly even without her crown on her head, if you will. She doesn't have to walk around with a crown. She's a queen in her own right. That's the one word, that extra word, Esther Hamalka. And he sees it again. He doesn't realize it, but that's what he's seeing. He's seeing Esther Hamalka. Continues on, right? Vayomer lo hamelech, maloch Esther Hamalka. Okay, what do you want, Esther Hamalka? There are 2 points in this pasuk that are very important. Achashverosh addresses Esther as Esther Hamalka. Well, you know what that means? He's calling her Majesty. The king is calling the queen Her Majesty. This is an act of humility on Achashverosh's part. Sometimes you act humble without even realizing that you're acting humble because something overcomes you. He's overcome by it. In her presence, he has to humble himself because his royalty comes from garments. That's all. If he's not dressed in it, they tell of these stories where we've read them, and I think that the king of Jordan actually did this. He wanted to see the people, so he got dressed like a regular person and went out into society and wanted to know what they were saying, etc., etc. So I read once, but we've read this in stories right over where the king will go out not dressed b'malchut. Does anybody notice that he's a melech? No. What gives him his malchut? His pomp and circumstance, right? But Esther, if she walked out, she didn't have to have anything. Everybody would have talked to her for a few minutes and you would have been stricken by her divine charisma. That's the difference. That's point one. Point two is he offers her what? Ad chatzi malchut. What's such an offer? What's going on here? Achashverosh was stating something crucial without realizing what he's saying. He's not the Gemara debates, is Achashverosh a nar or a tippish? That's what the Gemara says. In those, the Gemara says, is he a nar? Is he just a child? He hasn't grown up yet. He's immature, or is he a really fool? That's the Gemara's debate. You know, when you see Achashverosh and how he acts in here, sometimes that's our leaders. I won't say that that's what's going on in our American politics, but you gotta, as one said, one observer on our politics now, we have one that's mentally challenged and one that's morally challenged. So, you
We
know,
have a choice between a fool and a felon.
yeah, well, that's, you know, that's what we got. Okay,
My daughter said
you
she
know,
knew.
okay, but that's what we got. So what about here? He's not aware that he's being humbled. And yet, what is he doing by saying, Achatziah Malchut? He's saying, you're an equal partner to me. Without realizing what he's doing, you're an equal partner. Esther and Achashverosh were totally opposite personalities. The Megillah is striking this. On the one hand, Achashverosh indulged repeatedly in voluptuous feasting, right? That's all he's interested in. A big feast. And Esther plays to that. Oh, you come to the parties. Oh, sure, there'll be food, there'll be beautiful women, there'll be drink. Oh, I'm coming, right? He's feasting while Esther was fasting. He feasts while Esther fasts. He focuses on the physical while she denies and turns down and rejects every physical possible cosmetic that is offered to her, except the Megillah tells us what Haggai demands that she put on, that she use. He forces her, right? Achashverosh demonstrates a volatile temper, a poor judgment. That's Achashverosh on the one hand. While Esther, what's Esther? It's a foil. Esther's the foil of Achashverosh. She's just the opposite. Achashverosh has this volatile temper that kills Vashti, doesn't he? Right? He has poor judgment. What's he doing? Esther manifests an inner strength, a steadfastness by never revealing who she is, because she knows there is a goal to be met, and she plays it out, and she doesn't budge. She has her eye on the ball. Achashverosh displays a self-centered, egocentric personality. Esther, a model of sacrificial vision and sacrificial action. 2 seconds. Bottom line, Esther was the true royalty in every sense of the word, and Achashverosh is the opposite. So in these psukim, the Rav strikes here that you got to read it carefully. What you have are the opposites of each other, and it's so important to see. 2 seconds, okay? Now jump to, and the Rav now goes. So that's the lesson, understanding who Esther is. In these opening psukim in this parak, this is Esther. And then she plays it for what it's worth, right? You see how we know the end of the story. So we see the brilliance of the strategy that she's laying out. She says, I want you and I want Haman. I want you. And and Haman is totally unaware that he's falling into a trap, right? It's beautiful strategy. It's working brilliantly, but that's fine. But there's something else happening, because the Rav wants to analyze one other thing in this chapter. Not only who Esther is, not only what makes her tick, but what makes Haman tick. Haman is such an anti-Semite. What is it? Jump to Pasuk Yud Gimel. Here, V'chol zeh, right? V'chol zeh eino shoveli. V'chol eit asher ani ro'eh et Mordechai ha-Yehudi yoshed b'shar HaMelech. He's flying high, but he admits, I am literally destroyed I have everything in the world. I'm invited, nobody else is invited. The king has me come. The queen has me come, nobody else. And not only was I invited today, but I'm invited tomorrow. I'm invited again, and nobody else is coming. But what bothers me, I can only focus on one thing. There's this Mordechai HaYehudi. There's the Jew. When we read this pasuk, we must realize that the Jew in Persia discovered what we have discovered, unfortunately, on October 7th. Both thousands of years ago and again today, we had our encounter with Amalek. This pasuk is telling us about our encounter with Amalek. And the Rav notes it was a rude awakening to the Jew then, and we can tell us it was a rude awakening to the Jew today. Because we believe, what's the rude awakening? We believe that man is created in the image of God. We honestly believe that man is good. There's something good in every man. Every man was created b'tselem Elokus. And yet, there are men who prove, back to the point that we were making earlier, that there is an alternative reality. And that's a rude awakening for the Jew, because the Jew is a person with optimism, because he has a positive outlook to the world. He gave the world this concept that every person has goodness to him. And Haman taught us that man can be satanic. Right? We saw with our own eyes from time to time, man goes berserk and turns into a monster, doesn't he? He replaces the divine personality in him with the satanic personality. And that is a rude awakening to the Jew. The Jew in the Megillah also discovers that although man Satan hates everyone, he particularly hates the Jew. There's something in harming the Jew that gives them, it could be a man or a woman, I don't care, I'm just saying a man. It doesn't, there are miserable women and miserable men that go berserk. They're Satans. He gives it, and harming the Jew gives them specific delight. They live for it, right? Ultimate delight. It doesn't matter if man Satan is a socialist. The Rav writes this, it's brilliant. It doesn't matter if he's a socialist, a capitalist, a fascist, progressive, reactionary, agnostic, or secular, or even a religious cleric. It doesn't matter. The hatred of the Jew, of this person, is what makes them tick. It preoccupies them. That's all that makes them tick. They hate the Jew. And that's what this pasuk in Yud Gimel is. The Chol Eino Shaveli. It doesn't matter what I have. I can be the wealthiest person, the most powerful man. The Jew is there. I got it to destroy the Jew. We might ask, and we should ask, what motivates this hate, right? Why does it exist? What is it? Our simple existence provokes the non-Jew, the Satan, to want to annihilate us? What is it? Truth is, there is no answer. It's completely absurd, unreasonable, and mad. In reality, we can't hide from it. And if we do hide from it, we pay a dear price. And we do, and we tend to hide from it. So that's why it's a rude awakening. If we do, we pay an enormous price. It makes no sense why one little nation, one sliver on the map, surrounded by millions and millions and millions of Muslims, hate so much that one little piece of land that is owned. They had no interest in Eretz Yisrael until the end of the 19th and early 20th century. Why? Because now the Jew wanted it. The Jew wanted to come back home. No, we can't have you. We can't have you. And now, finally, by the way, left thinkers in Israel, you know this, I assume you know this, that have now, after October 7th, had to suddenly say, what?
A little bit of a rude awakening.
It's a rude awakening to them. They're suddenly realizing, what are they realizing? That they really do hate us. That this two-state solution, though we would like it, they don't want it. We've offered it over and over. It was offered to them at the early part of the 20th century by Britain, right? The Balfour Declaration was, okay, we'll give a Jewish state, and we'll have, and in 1947, what were we given? We were given 20% of the land. We said, okay, we'll take 20% of the land. It doesn't matter. They don't want any Jew there.
Rabbi,
No, 1 second. What, Shelley? Give me, or else I'm going to run out of time. Hold on. It makes no sense that one little nation that occupies such a small amount of land could generate such hatred. It is this pasuk that reminds us that the hatred of the Jew arouses in Amalek something so violent, right? They want to annihilate us. And this pasuk is demonstrating, and it demonstrates for us, okay, in the Megillah, the man's name is Haman. Today, the man's name is Sinwar. It doesn't matter. 70 years ago, the man's name was Hitler. It doesn't matter. They go berserk. They need to destroy the Jew. Now listen, and I'm going to read to you a magnificent piece from the Rav. The Rav offered an analysis of the Megillah and the lessons it teaches us in the following. And it's just so, it sounds to me as if the Rav could have written it today, and the Rav wrote this 50 plus years ago, over 50 years ago. Listen to what he wrote. I want to emphasize that this experience is not restricted to the diaspora Jewry, as secular Zionism has been telling us. Oh, in the diaspora, you have the hatred of the Jew. Secular Zionists said, that's right, that was the Holocaust. That's outside of Israel. Boy, that sounds like prophetic, isn't it? Because we realized, unfortunately, the Holocaust appeared once again on October 7th. As an integral part of the Jewish experience, it's a universal experience, all inclusive. For our enemies, the problem of the state of Israel is not a problem only of an existence of a political institution. The desire of Arab radicals is to destroy not only the state of Israel, but its population. They want to kill the Jew, and not to realize that is a mistake. The Jew discovered also that the hostility toward the Jew by Amalek, by man Satan, is not directed exclusively against the religious Jew, who is different and unique by his dress, by how he looks. It's not just against the religious Jew. The hatred embraces religious as well as agnostic Jews, nationalist Jews as well as assimilationist Jews, the Jewish home adorned with the mezuzah and the home stripped of everything Jewish. It doesn't matter. You're a Jew, right? Hitler taught us that. You're a Jew. The hatred of Amalek is enough to encompass and embrace every Jew and every Jewish home. It just includes every Jew. The Medrash says, listen to this. The Medrash says that 18,500 Jews were invited to the reception that Achashverosh threw at the beginning of the Megillah. He threw for everybody. 18,500 Jews were invited. Apparently, 18,500 Jews were prominent enough and integrated enough into the general society to be invited by Achashverosh. It deemed necessary to invite them, right? Because they're part of society. They rose to the highest levels. Nevertheless, when the edict to destroy, to kill, and annihilate all the Jews, both young and old, children and women, in one day was published, the 18,500 prominent Jews were not excluded. They couldn't save themselves. There was no exemption. They were invited to the party, but just a few days later, the edict went out that we're going to kill all the Jews. Those 18,500 were among those that were going to be killed. There was no stopping anybody. At this point, the Jews realized and understood the idea of common destiny. Haman united all of us. Our sages say, in Gemara and Megillah, Daf Yud Daled Amud Aleph, the removal of the king of the ring from Achashverosh's finger to be placed on Haman's accomplished more than 48 prophets did. We took off the ring and he placed it on Haman's ring. Suddenly, they accomplished more in uniting us than 48 prophets. It's what we said after October 7th, didn't we?
Yeah.
We were united by, right before that, October 7th, they said, we don't know how to live together. We know how to die together. And that was unfortunate. And then it happened. It united the people. And the Rav says, and let us not forget that during the first Commonwealth, during Bayis Rishon, the idea of common destiny was not known to the Jew because the Jews were divided into two kingdoms, the 10 tribes on the one hand and Yehuda and Binyamin on the other. At times, their interests collided and there was civil war. There was. In Bayis Rishon, there was civil war. Now, for the second Commonwealth, for Bayis Sheni, God wanted a united people. He did not want the second Commonwealth to consist of two kingdoms. Who could unite them? Haman. He taught them this idea of common destiny and the impossibility of escaping from Jewish destiny. Quite often, certain Jews think that they can escape the challenge and the destiny that other Jews have to meet. I'm above it. I won't meet it. There were German Jews, the Rav wrote. Remember, Rav was educated in Germany in the University of Berlin. There were German Jews I knew who maintained that what happened to the others could not happen to them for a variety of reasons, they felt. Cultural, sociological, economic, political. The Rav wrote, I could not argue with them because their reasons they thought were solid. They were very integrated into society, and society would not be able to get along without them. They were so integrated, they were part of the 18,500. We're going to beat the system. We're German Jews. I always kept quiet. I could not argue with them because there was no arguing with a well-cultured German Jew. But the historical experience of the Nazi epic proved the opposite. All Jews are vulnerable. All Jews are alike. All Jews are equal. And all Jews share the same predicament. All learned from this pasuk. The Chose Eino Shoveli, the Rav. The Rav wrote that on this pasuk. It's unbelievable, right? The Rav wrote, and you can lift those words and you can say, my God, he's talking to me right now, post October 7th, telling us 18,500 were invited to the party. But once Haman gets to power, he hates the Jews so much, 18,500 can't save themselves. You can be invited into the White House. You can be invited anywhere. If God forbid, Satan goes berserk and humanity is snuffed out of the person and the image of God no longer is there, people can do a lot of damage. And Haman is just one example. Sinwar is another example. We got to learn that this is our reality. So the Rav is teaching us two things in this parak, right? From this parak, the Rav learns what makes Esther tick. What is it? One word. She has chen. Chen, she has that divine charisma. And with that divine charisma, she's willing to be a Jewish leader, and a Jewish leader has to be willing to risk. You have to be willing to risk. You can't just work with logic. That's lesson one from this parak, all seen in the first three psukim that the Rav demonstrates, because she shouldn't have, from logic, she shouldn't have done what? Held a 3-day fast. That was absurd. But not if you are motivated by the spiritual. If you're motivated by a divine charisma, you work like Esther. Finally, the Rav then focuses at the end of the parak on Haman. What makes Haman hate us so much? The Rav says, we don't know. We only know that the Hamans become man Satan. A satanic personality overcomes them. And they go berserk. They go mad. And that they delight only in one thing, like Hitler delighted, seeing Jews suffer and be tortured and be killed and annihilated. Sinwar has only one happiness in life, when he sees Jews die. It is absurd. The world doesn't understand this, but the Jews have to understand it. I don't know what the world's going to understand or not, but if we don't understand it, then we pay a big price. It's a rude awakening to us. It was a rude awakening to, it seems to be the same players, right? Iran. It's Iran 2,000 years, 2,000+ years ago. It's more than 2,000 years ago, right? Almost 3,000 years ago. And Iran today. It's the same players, all the same players. And we didn't learn it then, and we didn't learn it now, and we pay it for a price. We pay a dear price. Okay, so that's why the Megillah resonates so much with us. Okay, next week we'll continue on. Yes.
Rabbi, it's Shelley. I wanted to say something earlier.
Shelley, 1 second. Hannah.
You mentioned about the skill that she has, and the word chen is wonderful because she has chesed and nevuah.
Oh, you want to say chen stands for chesed and nevuah. Ches and nun. Okay, very nice. Very nice. Yes, Shelley.
Okay. You know what? I believe that there's a foundation word under all this hate and murder from the beginning of time. And the one word is jealousy. You know what? Everybody knows the Old Testament, our Torah, and we are called God's chosen people, and they can't stand it. They don't want us to have even a drop of land.
There's a lot of truth to what you're saying. Yes,
and
there's a
they
lot of
teach
truth
their
to what you're saying.
children out of their Quran to kill. That's their
Right.
mitzvah.
Right.
It's a
Right.
horrible thing, but out of
There's so many-
jealousy,
Yeah.
hate,
Okay, we'll pick up next week on chapter 6,
and a
okay?
beautiful
Thank you,
shiur.
Rabbi.
Thank you.
Masky.
Okay.
Thank you,
Everybody
Rabbi
should have a
Masky.
wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You too, Rabbi. Thanks.
Thank you.